So far, you've created functions and programs according to well-defined specifications and guidelines. But what if you're given a problem and no clear set of instructions on how to approach it? In this series of videos, we will demonstrate strategies for designing a program from scratch. Our task will be to write a program in C that will allow the user to play a game of tic-tac-toe. Here we have a tic-tac-toe board. Tic-tac-toe is a game for 2 players. The players take turns placing either an O or an X on a vacant slot in the board. The game ends when a player manages to get a row, column, or diagonal of either X's or O's, or if every slot is filled in such a way that there is no line of matching symbols. Before we do any coding, it's important that we thoroughly understand the task and make a plan. We'll begin by running through a game of tic-tac-toe and recording what happens as the game progresses. For clarity, we'll refer to each slot by a number, starting with 1 in the top left and ending with 9 in the bottom right. At the start of the game, we have an empty board. No one has made a move, and all slots are vacant. The game is currently awaiting input from player O. Player O decides to place an O in slot 1. The board updates to reflect what player O has requested, and now it's player X's turn. Player X chooses to place an X in slot 5. The board updates again to display an X in slot 5, and the game waits for input from player O again. Play continues for a few more turns. At each turn, the game waits for input from a specific player, updates the board after receiving some command, and then repeats the process with the next player. At this point, the game is currently waiting for a command from player O. Player O chooses to place an O in slot 6, and the board updates to reflect this. Good job, player O! Since player O has managed to create a column of O's, the game declares player O as the winner and then ends. Here's a list of what happened during the game that was just played. Notice how each step is clearly laid out. This will be useful to us when we translate it into code. Understand the game? You may be tempted to begin coding now, but let's do some planning first. Did you notice how repetitive each player's move is? One useful technique when designing programs is looking for things we can group together. In this case, we can create a general process for handling a turn. In each turn, the same sequence of operations happens. Each turn begins with the game waiting for a player to make a move. Once a player has made a request, the game updates and displays the new board. Then the game checks the board configuration and does one of 2 things. If there's a winning line, the game declares a winner and ends. Otherwise, the game continues, and now it's the other player's turn. At the start of each line in brackets, we've written who or what is performing the action on that line. Since we want to create the game and not a player, let's look at this list solely from the game's perspective. As you can see, we're getting a lot closer to something that resembles code. Each of these operations is a piece of code we need to write. You could imagine the entire process as a function. Since we know how to get user input, we can see that some of the operations are fairly short pieces of code that might exist within the function. But others are larger and should be handled in their own function. And others may not fit into the function we're defining. If the operations we've listed define a single turn, then beginning the next player's turn isn't part of the process. Instead, that would be a new call to our function. This is an insight. A game is a sequence of turns. Let's define a game. We need to set up a blank board. Then we play 1 turn. And then, if the game is over, I'm going to copy this from where we had it in turn into our new process. If our game is over, then we declare a winner or we perform another turn. Beginning the next player's turn makes us go back and re-execute a line in our process, performing a turn. That's a loop. So let's change our process to reflect the loop. And now we have a plan, a design. Let's copy our design into a file. Then we can start building up our program using the comments as a guide. In the next video, we'll start by converting our comments into a code framework.